big story, this Kulbhushan Jadhav case at the ICJ. Today, the court is going to deliver a verdict on the provisional measures demanded by India. We are going to see whether the court will rule that Pakistan cannot go and execute Kulbhushan Jadhav till the proceedings are pending at the ICJ. Will they also urge Pakistan to give an action-taken report and make sure and ask for an assurance from Pakistan to make sure and give a report stating that nothing will be done that will prejudice the rights of Kulbhushan Jadhav. And very importantly, the jurisdiction issue will also be settled. Let's hope it is settled in India's favor. Let's go across to our strategic affairs expert joining us this morning, Mr. Sreeram Chaulia. Mr. Chaulia, very important day. The jurisdiction issue, if decided in favor of India, means Pakistan cannot go back. Now they'll have to explain why they denied consular access 16 times and what really is the authenticity of that trial, that sham trial that took place in a Pakistani military court.
Yes, it's a decision day, and I think the whole of India is waiting with anticipation, and so would Pakistan, because they have built up a narrative in that country which is contrary to factual and objective evidence. So I think we would hope that this whole is going to be punctuated by international justice. And secondly, I think it will have major ramifications for bilateral relations for sure, and also for our national security. And so it's a legal issue for sure, but it's got other repercussions around it. So we should be discussing the wider implications of this case, because what will happen if they lose? I mean, they generally tend to be very sore losers. So that's the big question, and we should be prepared for a blowback.
Sreeram, taking cue from what Aditya said, a very pertinent point. In fact, we were discussing with you also that this is now the verdict. The verdict is going to take time. It's going to be a long drawn process, and there is no definite timeline. But like he pointed out, within 48 hours, perhaps 72 hours, the ICJ has actually taken a very serious cognizance of this matter. Just to put in perspective, maybe you could reflect upon the earlier cases as well. I do understand that India and Pakistan have confronted each other after 18 years. But so early, what does it really point towards?
I think Harish Salve made a very convincing argument that this is extremely urgent, because the life of an innocent man is at stake. And international justice, whenever you invoke human rights and the entitlements of a prisoner who's being held in such an unfair manner, they usually respond with a humanitarian gesture which is quick. Although the Pakistani barrister Qureshi argued that there is no hurry and the Indians are just pushing it because anyway he still has 150 days left. The point is, that was never clarified to us. In fact, we had heard about this 150 days for the first time in the presentation of the Pakistani side. So I think the court has taken to cognizance the urgency of the matter. Right. And that's why they are responding quicker. And, at the end of the day, no international court will ever allow an innocent person to just go and die like this, in the crudest of fashions without due process. I think they are responding. They believe that, his head is on the chopping block, literally.
I would like to bring in Mr. Sreeram Chaulia here. Mr. Chaulia, Pakistan has been talking about jurisdiction. They are saying that completely they have been ambushed by Harish Salve and the legal team. They did not have enough time. But what is your opinion? You have seen similar cases coming up at the International Court of Justice. Could we see the provisional measures being adopted? Could we see at least the execution will not happen? That's what the International Court of Justice will see. And perhaps that would be a major setback for Islamabad.
Aditya, whenever these consular access cases have been brought to the ICJ, the defendants have argued on the jurisdiction basis. So United States lost 3 cases, to Paraguay, to Germany, and to Mexico. In all these 3 cases, they said, we have our own domestic processes and doesn't matter, we don't need to bring it here. But ultimately, the court ruled against United States. It's another matter that United States used its power in the Security Council and skirted the decision and, in a way, did not abide by it. But Pakistan is a much weaker country. Let's remember, let's not even compare these cases at one point, because it cannot defy international opinion the way the US has used by mobilizing its own constituents. So I think the only recourse will be China for them to fall back on, to support them in the Security Council when it comes to that. So jurisdiction, I think, is going to be critical. But I want to also raise the other point about the state of relations.
How important do you think today is going to be in terms of an interim stay that India is looking at from the ICJ, sir?
Rhythm, we are all anticipating a positive outcome in the form of staying the execution of a son of our soil, Kulbhushan Jadhav. And secondly, it's also a matter of fact that we play civilized games. We don't play dirty games. That's the message we are sending through this whole process.
Yes.
That's the message Narendra Modi has sent to the world by going to the court, saying, you may abduct our people and you may, abuse them and deny them their basic rights, but we will still go through the civilized route. You do the beheadings, you do these kind of, dirty tricks, but we will play it as per the new rules and the norms. And I think we are setting a higher moral standard here in the process by invoking the court and by invoking international law, because that is the norm of civilized conduct in international affairs. And I think by going to the World Court, we are telling the world who is responsible and who is irresponsible, who is on the right and who is on the wrong. So I think this is actually a kind of a watershed moment in the history of the subcontinent.
Right.
Pakistan need not have brought us to this point. We could have solved this diplomatically. We were giving them so many demarches, seeking consular access.
16 times, Mr.
And,
Chaulia.
We could have done this. This was the last resort. We were forced into doing this, and that shows how
really
we have
point
always
that
played
we
by
were
the rule
giving
book
them
and how we've been on the right side of history.
Mr. Sreeram Chaulia is also here, and perhaps you could also reflect a little more about this. What happens now? Even if India gets the provisional measures, there is no execution that takes place. What exactly do you think, sir, will happen after that? It is a long-drawn legal battle.
Yes, Aditya, but there's always a way to end the case completely if they come to their senses, which is act in a diplomatic manner, which is to say, we will give you consular access now that there has been a stay order on the execution, and that once we get the provisional measures, they should slowly de-escalate the situation, because if they decide to go on the war path and to actually intensify firing and infiltration across the border, we are prepared for it. So rather than make matters worse for themselves, they should actually try and retrace and go back to what should have been the case last year itself when he was apprehended in the first place, which could have been justice done right then. And remember, many countries actually have systems of hostages being swapped, prisoners being exchanged and so on. That's a way where we can actually concretely bring back Jadhav, but that's provided they behave in a rational manner. Unfortunately, in this
I'll just add to that, Sreeram Chaulia.
This thing about the kidnapping, that's also at the root of this all, isn't it, Mr. Chaulia? Because, this is where the nefarious angle of Pakistan comes through. The fact that he was kidnapped in an area which is of strategic importance to India, and Pakistan perhaps feels threatened. This is all part of the geopolitics that Pakistan is getting at.
Absolutely, Shivani. If you rewind to March last year when he was abducted, he was picked up from close to the Chabahar port, which is central to India's strategy for regional connectivity all the way to Afghanistan and Central Asia. Prime Minister Modi had been there some time ago, and we are committing at least $20 billion to developing Chabahar. Our business persons, legitimate business persons like Kulbhushan Jadhav, there are many such who are visiting Iran, prospecting for business opportunities in near Chabahar. And Chabahar is right close to the border to the Pakistani side, and where they have Gwadar port developed by the Chinese on the Gulf of Oman. So if you look at it that way, they are sending a message. They're trying to deter us from developing Chabahar, from improving our strategic connectivity through Iran, and sending a message that we are going to do this to you if you dare to encircle us or weaken us geopolitically. So I think we have to counter this by increasing our investment in Chabahar. Kulbhushan Jadhav should be an example for us to say we have to also look after the safety of our nationals who are flooding into Iran. We've got to be cautious as well after this incident in terms of national security.
Sreeram Chaulia, I'll come to you now. Exactly like Sushil is saying, the point really is about Pakistan's track record. The point is, when we asked for consular access, they said we'll give it to you only if you link it with assistance in helping us in the investigation of this case. Isn't that a very cunning, a very crafty, a very disgraceful thing to ask when Indian citizen Jadhav should be, as a matter of right, be given consular access?
Yes, Rhythm, fair play is also conditional for them. That's the reality that we have been facing. Christine Fair, an American scholar, has written an amazing book called Fighting to the End. And that shows how irrational Pakistan has been historically. They lose the wars, but they keep on wanting to wage more and more wars, despite knowing that they are conventionally, inferior. So there is something irrational, and we have to trace it back to the jihadi mindset. the Pakistani military is not really a professional military that is secular. I mean, so they have this whole jihadist sentiment which says, come what may, we are going to, spite our nose in order to offend the Indians. So I think that's what is happening right now. Even if this verdict goes, I know unfortunately, as Sushilji said, it's a long trek for us. We have to keep on fighting because it's not a rational party on the other hand, on the other side of the table. And when it comes to irrational actors, we have to adopt more than legal measures. We have to have a covert strategy. As I said, we have to have a geopolitical strategy, and of course the legal ways, because unless we have a comprehensive strategy to tackle this irrational actor, it's not possible to bend them in the direction that we want to. So we have to actually go back and resort to these comprehensive strategy which has multiple means, because we have done a great thing by going to ICJ, and I think we put the moral high ground, and we are going to make a legitimacy case. But beyond that, we have to have other strategies in order to get him back.
Sreeram, before we actually give it away to Rhythm, who's at The Hague holding this coverage for us, somewhere, what has India managed to do? When you bring this entire, case into focus, when you talk of terrorism, when you talk about the military kangaroo court that Pakistan really believes in, somewhere has India been able to turn the table on Pakistan? Because this was a Pakistan wanting to point fingers to India, saying, let's talk. And that's the reason why many believe that suddenly you had this announcement of Kulbhushan Jadhav being executed. And you remember that tweet coming in from the handle of the military there, not even the civil government. So what has India managed to do? Has it at least brought to fore the kind of duplicity that Pakistan really executes?
Duplicity, Dipti, and also, in a way, we have exposed the multiple contradictions within their polity, the civil-military imbalance, and we have also, remember, Bar Association, some lawyers, conscientious people in Pakistan have opposed the summary manner in which Kulbhushan Jadhav has been dealt with. So in a way, we have shown that this society is struggling. It's got a state apparatus that is a rogue establishment, and that essentially there is a what we call in Hindi like a parda. A kind of a screen, smoke screen between the people and the establishment.
Absolutely. This is something that India has taken on a war footing, isn't it? And that is perhaps an element of surprise for Pakistan that they weren't anticipating. As Colonel Vienna Thapar was mentioning, there have been cases where Indian civilian soldiers, Mr. Chaulia, have gone missing, haven't met proper justice. This time, they were trying to act too smart with us, and India outsmarted them.
Shivani, they're refusing to abide by the Vienna Convention, but it's an opportunistic refusal, because when their citizens, including their diplomats/spies, were detained recently in Afghanistan by the Afghan intelligence agency for questioning, they cried foul, and they said that Afghanistan must abide by the Vienna Conventions of proper treatment of diplomats. So, it's all about selective interpretation of justice. When it comes to making a case for their interests, they invoke all the laws and the fairness and the justice. When it comes to, India, they will say that, India is just unfairly accusing us and so on. So we must, I think, in the process of going to ICJ, a big moral victory for us is, no matter what the outcome, a big moral victory for us is we have, in a way, exposed this hypocrisy and double standards. Republic is #1 in India because you've been doing this consistently against all enemies of this country. So in a way, through this live coverage Rhythm, what you are bringing to the people of India is complete pardafash of this double standard and hypocrisy of the other party.